So I want to focus on hitting the backlog this year a little bit and playing some games that have been sitting in my collection. There's one that has really been towards the top of that list, one that I've been wanting to play for a while, and I know I was going to love it going in. And it's actually my brother's favorite game of all time. I'll put a link. He did a video a few years ago about his favorite games ever. I'll put a link in the description to his video. His favorite game, and he's been begging me for years, like, come on, you gotta play it. You have to play this. And eventually I will, eventually I will. Finally, I got around to playing Lost Odyssey the past couple of months, and yeah, it was a brilliant experience. I knew I was going to like it, but I ended up enjoying it even more than I thought I was going to. Just an incredible RPG. Mistwalker, I really wish that they would kind of come back with another big console RPG, either something original or a sequel to this would be definitely my preferred thing. But I've really enjoyed their games. I really enjoyed Blue Dragon on the 360, and even have some of the DS sequels there to Blue Dragon, and The Last Story I enjoyed on the Wii. This is definitely the best that they've done. It just a remarkable experience, and so many familiar elements, and again, because there's so many familiar people like Sakaguchi and everyone, so many people on that team are people that I've been familiar with over the years, growing up with Final Fantasy since the NES, and really that series being at the forefront of my experience with RPGs, and really being the reason why I started playing other RPGs. Like that definitely the Final Fantasy was the linchpin, was the keystone to my love of RPGs, and really made it expand beyond that series then over the years. But this has all those familiar elements and styles, and really just feels like home in so many ways. Everything about it feels like such a natural evolution from, say, Final Fantasy X. Visually, a lot of it reminds me of a cross between the art style of something like Final Fantasy XII and some of the presentation of Final Fantasy X. A lot of the combat mechanics and a lot of the general game mechanics remind me of Final Fantasy IX in so many different ways. There's so many Final Fantasy elements in here, and definitely the music and everything about it feels as Final Fantasy as you can get without legal issues. Really just some different spell names and Chocobo or two, and a few summons and things like that. I mean, this genuinely feels like Final Fantasy 13, like the true one. And I played Final Fantasy 13 and just really did not like that. Back when that came out, it was one of the first games I got for my PlayStation 3. I was very disappointed, and 13-2 I didn't even finish. I thought it was a little bit better, but I just wasn't invested in it. And the series changed in a way that I just didn't enjoy anymore. And really, this, to me, was a great fusion of all of the very traditional RPG elements, but it wasn't held back. It didn't feel that it was just unevolved. It felt like an evolution of those old mechanics, unlike something like Blue Dragon, which I enjoyed Blue Dragon, but the entire time I played it, it felt like it was just another by-the-numbers traditional Japanese RPG. It was an enjoyable experience, but nothing about it really blew me away. Nothing about it really had me so engrossed in that experience that I wanted to invest more time in, say, another game and doing all the side quests, or playing a second time through the main game. It was enjoyable, but it's kind of like, alright, that was alright. This here was just fantastic, and so much of it takes everything that is what a traditional Final Fantasy is, and keeps the great stuff intact, and the core fun elements of that, and the traditional elements that I really enjoy in an RPG, but it's not held back by the way it highlights those older features and that older structure. It doesn't feel like a game that's lost in time. It really feels like it's just taking those and continuing it without trying to completely change up the formula. It has little bits here and there that just make it a great traditional feeling, fun RPG. It looks absolutely gorgeous in every way, from presentation wise. Music is incredible. It's one of the best soundtracks I've heard recently. Easily my favorite Xbox 360 game that I've played by far, RPG or otherwise. Just a remarkable, incredible experience. Everything about it is just so amazing. And one thing that really blew me away was the characters and the dream elements, and finding bits and pieces of different characters' memories throughout the game. Because if you really look at just the general plot of the whole thing, it's a very, it fits into that traditional mold in almost a negative sense, because there's really nothing about it that's super interesting or creative or great. It's good. It's just kind of standard, but really elevates it and makes it into a remarkable experience story-wise, are the characters and are the different character interactions, and piecing together elements of their past and who they are, and really opening up. And it really, I think, added so much more to the game, not just the moments where you unlock memories because of different elements of the plot line, but the ones that you find just kind of along the way as you seek different parts of memories out, or you just randomly stumble upon, hear a conversation as you're walking down the street, and it sparks a memory in Kai's mind, and you read this beautiful experience, and it adds so much more heart and emotion to it. And that's where I think the strength of the storytelling really is not just the general plot, but really the heart and emotion behind that, and the little moments, and the interactions between the different characters and the personalities of those characters. That's what really sold me on it, and really just elevated the entire level of storytelling in here to something that is extraordinary. It was absolutely beautiful, and just a wonderful emotional experience, and all those different moments made you feel such an attachment to those characters. You really felt for what was happening because of the people involved, not necessarily just because of what was happening on the grander scale. So I really enjoyed that. I liked everything about it did something too that reminded me of Final Fantasy X, and talking about that. It was the type of game, in comparison to something like 13, the linearity of it. Final Fantasy X is largely a linear game compared to some of the other Final Fantasies, especially, then of course you get 12, which is a huge open world thing. But that and 13, 10, I felt like it was just a way to drive forward the narrative, and it worked well, and it never felt that you were trapped in the experience. It felt like you were just kind of naturally moving forward as you would, and it opened up when it needed to, and you had time to explore when you really wanted to. Versus 13, I always felt like I just had nowhere that I wanted to go. Even when it opened up towards the end, it just kind of, I didn't want to explore. I didn't really care about it, and it just kind of felt like I was trapped in this storyline with no real interest in expanding beyond it. And Lost Odyssey is, for the most part, very linear. I didn't explore a whole lot until, especially Disc 4. Towards the end of Disc 4, I put an extra, like, 5 to 10 hours into it beyond what I thought I was going to, just trying to find stuff like Forbidden Cave, and going to the Temple of Enlightenment and things like that, and like finding all this extra stuff, and really wanting to do that because the pace of the narrative really wanted to propel you forward in a mostly linear manner. And I think that's when a linear RPG can work, is that if the pacing of the story is better, if it's not interrupted, if it's better, if it's constantly moving you forward, and then you're given these lull moments that are perfectly timed out to make you want to explore, and it makes sense story-wise why you would want to explore at these times, and you're given the option to do all this optional stuff. I think that's when linearity works, when it benefits the pacing of the story, and you're given open moments where it makes sense, not just constant open moments. And if the story doesn't work in that form, you start to feel trapped, and like you're not given enough freedom. This never crossed that line for me. I do think, though, I will say that there was a bit of unevenness in some of the dungeons. Like every single area in the game was visually extraordinary. Both the environments were absolutely gorgeous, and the types of enemies were very well done. I loved a lot of the artistic choices that were made there, and the music was fantastic. But it was a bit uneven where my enjoyment of actually traveling through some of the sections was a bit uneven. Some I enjoyed much more than others, and that's just a very minor complaint, really. So nothing really major to complain here at all. I really enjoyed the little additions to things, like the ring system was something that was a great addition to otherwise incredibly traditional battle mechanic, and using, of course, also the timing to try and get a perfect hit. That little bit reminded me of a very toned down version of Legend of Dragoon. Like, kind of was hoping the whole time that it would expand to something more like that. But yeah, it did enough where it took a very traditional formula and just added enough spice of something new, something modern, and something fun to make it feel new enough to where it didn't feel held back by clinging to old motifs. It really just kind of made it a very rich, fun, traditional experience, and an incredible RPG. definitely this, like, I would say that's worth owning, going and buying a used 360 just for this game. It was that great. And playing it, I was like, oh man, why does it have to be just on the 360? Because I'm not a big fan of that console. But there are a few exclusives that I grabbed for it that are just like, wow, this is worth owning a system for, and this is definitely the king of that crop. An amazing experience, and I really wish you could have, you know, Lost Odyssey 2. That would be incredible. See, like a re-release of this, just like a minor remaster with a sequel there. That would be incredible. But I don't think it's ever going to happen. Sadly, that's going to be one of those, like, you know, impossible wishlist games. But hey, we live in a world where we're getting Shenmue 1 and 2 HD and Shenmue 3 and who knows what after that. So nothing is impossible. But yeah, just a remarkable experience. I was so happy that I finally played it. My brother's like, finally! He sent me a text message, you know, just exclamations, finally, you're playing that game! And again, I'll link his video below for his favorite games. Just, this was a great experience. I'm glad I finally sat down and played it.